This is Visions Under Construction, a chance for our guests to share their visions and tell us what they're working on. For their continued support, we would like to thank Simwood, straight-talking, forward-thinking telecoms. Simwood.com. Why not make Cloudonics your communication partner? Go to cloudonics.io. You can find everything about the VUC at VUC.me, thanks to Bluehost, and thanks also to ZipDX.com, the conference bridge, and to Voxphone.com for local rate dial-ins. As I said, you will not find out everything about the VUC by going to VUC.com. But you can find out a few things. Oh, look at this. I voted. Well, how outdated is that? My Astracon friend that I brought back is here with us. But more importantly, we've got some great guests because we're going to be talking about SignalWire. And we were very curious about it. Of course, just like everything else, I joined it immediately and it did nothing. So I'm going to take one of our guests aside at some point and try to address one challenge that I have with SIP and routing and so on. And maybe we can make a thing of this. Anyway, besides the regulars, and actually that's a word that's funny. There's nothing regular about James Bodie. He's with us. And he's not ready to speak. So Michael Graves.
Hello.
And James.
Hello. Good evening.
And Jay Carpenter, if you're paying attention, sir. And Andy Smith.
Hello.
Okay. So we've got Tony, who you know from FreeSwitch, right? Anthony, welcome. Always great to have you with us.
Howdy, how's it going? I'd like to point out I went to 2 Astracons in a row now, and I still didn't see you. I thought you won't come to ClueCon. I'm going to come find you, and you still didn't see you.
I haven't been invited, Tony. We can talk about that later. By the way, I didn't mean to omit you, Corrado, but the way the little vignette videos are, you weren't in the order there. Corrado is with us.
Okay. Good evening from Scotland.
And Eric Lagerway. Eric, welcome. Always great to have you.
Hola.
Wait a minute, I'm missing somebody from SignalWire. Oh, Brian isn't here, right?
Brian said he's caught up on a call, and Mike Jarris might be joining us, but he's not here yet.
Well, they can come in whenever they like.
Yep, sure.
Just a quick side.
Sean's listening to the back channel, and Evan's at an airport.
Great. And, we do have an IRC, VUC on freenode.net. It's really the only thing I'm able to watch. We should really do Twitter and YouTube. Hey, Michael is with us. There he is. Hey, Michael.
Greetings.
Good to have you. All right. Anyway, before we get started, I'm going to do something totally irrelevant. Already started, folks. Relevant. I ordered some these things. They get all worn out, and you start to have to tear little things out. €2 all the way from China, free delivery. They came today, got 4 of these. So I replaced them, and they're looking good. So with that,
Brian.
Oh my goodness, we're full house. It's Brian.
Nice.
Hello.
Let's get to the look of Brian. You're a little bit blocked by the screen, but other than that, you got a nice.
We can fix that.
Yeah.
And a nice, lovely green screen you have there.
Yeah, well, he's going to put Hawaii or something on the back of that. Anyway, I think we should start with Anthony, as far as the genesis of SignalWire, maybe.
Yeah.
Where does this come from? Because you guys have been around forever.
Yeah.
Almost. Why SignalWire? Who's it for, and how did it start?
Well, if we just briefly remember what happened with FreeSwitch, there was an era where the telecom industry was sort of domineering with physical equipment and just horrible functionality and kind of just locked you in. And we started FreeSwitch because we wanted to disrupt that and kind of put development into the hands of everyone. However, after 12 years of trying to keep up with every different protocol and all the different functionality that you need to do, we made a really amazing toolkit that still has a really steep learning curve. So, with the era today of more bandwidth and more mainstream people wanting access to things like telephony, we created SignalWire because we want to take everything that FreeSwitch represented as an open source project and make it as a usable product, so that everyone with any kind of development skills is able to leverage telephony and SIP and things that we've made super complicated because we put so much, flexibility almost to detriment because no one knows how to configure everything perfectly. You really have no choice the way things are today because SIP is so complicated, and controlling it and being able to do all these things like interfacing with creating of a voicemail and user accounts and all the extra stuff that goes well beyond normal infrastructure. So you're starting out with like, I have a really good idea for a business. I think we can just, connect it to some voice over IP services. And then you go looking and it's like, holy crap. Like, okay, so I have to get this SIP provider, but I don't know how to, I have to connect it to the software. And in order to run the software, I need to rack it up. And even with the cloud, it's like, I still have to have like a bunch of VMs and I have to run the software and keep it up to date. Keep the operating system up to date underneath that and all the dependencies it takes. If I use open source projects, like it's great, but I have to maintain like a whole bunch of different platform issues. And so those are all things that we've kind of mastered over the years. And we're kind of gluttons for punishment. And we figure that since we've already paved the way through it, that we should extend that to everyone else now so they don't have to suffer like we did. So that's kind of the premise.
Before we go any further, by the way, we all know now how many rings your IVR is set to for the Polycom ringing. Or was that somebody else?
Yeah, that's funny because that phone, I haven't touched that phone in like 2, 3, 4 years. I can't even remember the last time. It just sits there and it rings all the time and it's got dust on it.
Mine too. I get all these spit calls from people who or robots, whatever, who are using the same of trying to make it look like their neighbors. Anyway, Tony, you or somebody else could answer this. Backing up a little for people, because we've all known each other for years, literally. Backing up to talk about what the actual needs are for this kind of thing. I'm thinking an explanation like a company that needs to do something sophisticated with text messages, for example.
Oh, so you mean like a typical customer? What they would be?
Yeah, I mean, what is this? What can this do? But explaining this to somebody who hasn't necessarily investigated all this technology.
It starts with just think about people who have a really good idea, and we're very good at making things plain and simple without realizing it. Like FreeSwitch is so far distributed now that like you're probably using it all the time, not realizing it. Like I'm surprised myself when I find new, like there's companies that made stuff out of FreeSwitch acquiring each other now. So it's really just kind of far and wide, and you take it for granted because we kind of just made it all there, right? So a lot of people are starting to have really amazing ideas of stuff they could do, but it's actually not that easy to implement. So when they start with an idea, like someone that's like, I have an idea, I want to make a mobile app and then have a voice infrastructure behind it. And then they realize how hard that is, because just making the mobile app is already difficult. You need a product team and a whole bunch of effort to figure out the usability and like, what's that function? What does it mean to people that are customers? So there's a lot of companies out there. So a lot of them are companies. Like who we think is an ideal customer are someone that is trying to build a service that they want to extend to even larger audience. So like mobile apps that have functionality that has communication, like embedded integration to conferencing or WebRTC or contact center, or they're calling it something else these days, customer enablement or whatever the new buzzword is this year. There's just like a whole bunch of stuff that is very similar to what we've always been able to build with FreeSwitch, but it takes a much heavier hand and more skill set. And there's a huge barrier to entry. So there's a lot of people that have amazing ideas and then they're squashed because they realize they need to spend like $1 million minimum to hire like a bunch of engineers for a couple of years to build whatever their cool idea was. And the app might not be that difficult, but that's maybe the easy part, because when you really look at everything. So having those infrastructure pieces, and really there's a we all know CPaaS, another buzzword. that's been around for a while now. And our vision is that so far these platforms have been great at making more things accessible, but they also kind of focus on one thing, which is PSTN access. And we think the PSTN is on its way out the door. And we think there's a whole new modern era of communications, but the PSTN is still really important. So what our aim is to make that available to people, but not, you know, not at the cost of 10xing the wholesale price of phone minutes and trying to make money off of it. So that's not really our goal. It's to build infrastructure for people's applications. So you think about like you want to buy phone numbers and you have companies charging like many dollars a month just for phone numbers, when everybody knows that if they have wholesale access, they can get them much cheaper, but they don't have a platform to go with it. So it's kind of this like they're holding over a barrel. And a lot of these other CPaaS platforms, ironically, are using our technology in the first place, but not in a way that is scalable, because we have this, 12 years of experience on how to integrate our own software to work well. And a lot of people are just poking at it from the outside and not really adding, functionality into the core of FreeSwitch itself. They're just kind of using one of our existing demos or remote application tools to control it, ESL, and then front-ending that with something else. And here you go, I can make text messages and phone calls now. But there's really a lot more to it when you want to do stuff like have a user database. Like you want to provision accounts, like you want to be able to take, one or two API calls. You collect customer data from your sign-up page. You want to call us and just say, create me a user, and his name is Bill Smith, and he has this much, services, and then you can actually resell those things as services as part of your business. Things that are really hard to replicate, and we see it time everyone starts over with the same exact idea, and they take forever, and sometimes they fail to even finish it. And these are things that we could just have instantly available. So that's really the real big vision.
Let me break for just a second to mention that, first of all, the site, SignalWire.com, because these days there's so many TLDs that you never know whether it's .co, .io, your mother, I don't know, whatever it's going to be. This is .com, SignalWire.com. So that's great.
Okay.
Looking at the first page where you can log in or sign up. I know there's a credit also for people who want to develop. You can get in. By the way, I heard something about $100 or $50. I only got $5, but we'll get into that later off channel. Okay.
Yeah, we have a bunch of different ways to get credits, and you can use those right away. We also have super disruptive pricing because we're out to kind of show the world that there's much more to this game than the arbitrage of minutes. We have like 8 cents a month phone numbers and very reasonable, like I would say, disruptive rates on minutes, because we're not really trying to just find a way to force you to buy them from us. We just want you to have them as part of the toolkit of what we're letting you build things with.
Right. Let's take a hypothetical case of a group of people who have a podcast that they've been doing for 12 years, and they want to have people be able to connect to that podcast through a variety of methods: SIP, PSTN, outer space gamma rays. I don't know. Is there a simple way that could be set up so that people could call in and take part of this conference on the audio side, for example?
Yes, and I think that group of people could help give us a lot of input as we're in the middle of building on a bunch of stuff like that right now, because they're pretty knowledgeable in the space, I imagine. But we've had like WebRTC stuff we're working on. Like you've already seen over the years that we've been pretty big on WebRTC. We waited till like 2014 or something to start working on it, but it's been full speed ever since. We have all these different functionalities. That's another area where it's like you could have a whole show just about this, but I mean, WebRTC is like a cool thing, and everyone's trying to figure out how to make it, analysts and make money off of it and stuff. But the reality is, as a developer, it makes you want to beat your head against the wall because everything changes constantly, and it's like a moving target. So it's another thing that we kind of hope that we can make some of those things just more ubiquitous also by having like a nice API that shields you from dealing with all that crap and just having a way to come in on WebRTC and audio and video and bring it all together. And working on scaling conferences by having auto, because most of our platform is designed in microservices, and we have ways to make conferences scale on the fly by having interconnected conferences that grow as you add calls to it. So yeah, I think that group of people could maybe even end up having like the world's largest audience if they played their cards right.
Right. Well, that's an interesting idea, but we're talking, Michael, let's all be API together. API is something that not everybody's aware of either. I mean, we all here know what it means. I think the most difficult challenge here, someone has to know enough about this stuff to know that it can be put together. I mean, I'm not an engineer. I don't know that much about these things. You know, I've run Asterisk and so on. But the point is, someone, I mean, so even I could, if I spent the time, go into SignalWire and put something together. The average person can't. So first of all, you need to find people like me or others who already understand the elements to put them together. This has always been the problem. I think that what you're presenting is a platform that's really interesting, but it's still it's not, you know, the CEO of a company that's going to be able to come, who knows nothing about any of this stuff, who's going to be able to do anything with it. It's someone who has at least a little idea of how all this stuff fits together. So I don't know who wants to speak on that. We need to. Anthony, I love you, but we need to move on.
Yeah. Well,
Eric. Sure. Yeah, I'll take some of that. So I think from a product perspective and understanding your audience is really important. So from our perspective, we're all about, you know, enabling the developer, but the developers that we're kind of focusing on initially are obviously, you know, a bit, you know, mid-market and further up market. So we work pretty closely with some pretty big companies to enable some pretty complex and advanced applications. So, but by saying that, we're also, you know, providing a polite nod backwards to those that, sorry about that, to those that just want to get an application up and running. So we actually do, you know, one-for-one swaps for some of the other competitors out there to get them on board quickly. And that's been pretty helpful to a lot of customers. We also provide some real-time APIs that are coming down the pipe, you know, fast and furious to provide some of that advanced functionality that isn't available out there today. But to answer your question, we believe that our onboarding process is probably the least onerous or arduous, I should say, in all of the industry. If you go look at all the competitors in the space, the comments that we're getting back is this is dead easy, and why can't everybody else kind of do it this way? So I'm happy to help Randy with whatever you're trying to get accomplished there, and you know, let's just take it offline, and I'm happy to kind of walk you through it. But our whole mission is to, you know, help everybody get on into the program here, because you never know when an independent developer can turn into, you know, your best ally inside of a large enterprise, or turn into, you know, a unicorn. You just never know. So we cover the gamut, and we feel that the offer today is even robust enough to load, you know, small developers all the way up to really large enterprise, and that's exactly what's happening.
If I can interject, rather than developers and clients, you need another layer in the middle between them, and this is the layer that is made of by visionaries that can connect clients or potential usage for your APIs, and using developers to create the vision. But you need a visionary that can understand the building blocks and deliver something that is disruptive, something that is new. Without a visionary, there's no link between the future application and the APIs.
Good point.
Yeah, and I think that what you're talking about is basically technical influencers. Much like what you have in the social media realm, you have social media influencers. And we have that in mind as part of our roadmap, and that'll come to fruition by way of a pretty interesting marketplace concept that we're working on. So appreciate the comments, and it's certainly within the realm of our direction.
Great. Because many projects that had very good technicals, very good APIs, and very good developers ready to work with it didn't find and didn't exploit all the potential because there was an industry at the other side that had requirements and needs that were not connected correctly with the technicals.
Yeah,
it was that disconnect.
Makes perfect sense. I've seen it happen again and again, and really valid point. Appreciate
I don't know if everybody realizes this, but the laser was invented decades ago, but it was dubbed a solution in search of a problem for years. And now, just think for a second, the number of things. I mean, people have eye surgery. Their whole problem is corrected that they needed lenses for years. Now they wake up, they can see. I know people like that from laser surgery. There's 1,000 other laser applications, but until somebody woke up and said, wait a minute, maybe this, so this is a little bit of the problem. There are so many things out there that can be done through telephony. And I think, as Tony said, or Eric, I'm not sure who said this, but that stuff is pretty much the basic, PSTN idea. That paradigm is kind of on the way out. So, but we've got all this stuff to replace it. It's all ready to go, right? I want to just poke Brian and see what he's thinking, because he's looking good and he's looking at something. So, what do you got to say for yourself, Brian?
I'm really excited to be involved in this. This is it's been a long time coming. I'm just glad that we're taking these steps to move our project and come out with these products and services that'll help make communication simpler for the masses, because it seems to be a barrier of entry that we are seeing with customers now that are using our Stack product, that are implementing things themselves, tend to hit things that they don't anticipate. And we're trying to smooth that out and make that easier to do. The biggest one is scaling. Scaling FreeSwitch is a talent, and there's not a lot of people that can do it and do it right.
Yes, and it needs more than just FreeSwitch normally if you want to do that. So you have to add in something like Camera Elio or OpenSIPs or something like that.
There's orchestration that has to take place, and those things are not well understood in the engineering community. So it's fun to be able to provide customers scalable solutions on our cloud product that all of that headache and all of that infrastructure is taken care of, and they just have to worry about building their product or their application and not really having to think about anything else.
Hey, Brian, in parentheses, you look fantastic. What camera are you using?
This is a Logitech, one of the HD Pros. It's the PTZ camera.
Well, nobody cares about PTZ because we're not going to PT or Z you.
Well, but I do because see, if I were to back it out, you get to see
we see your monitor. Anyway, the image is fantastic, and we're all limited by the limits of the Hangout here. So you probably have the best look of anybody. Now, don't let that go to your head. There's no.
And then I do have the built-in green screen. That wall is painted.
That's true. That's good too.
And I'm going to get rid of this desk, so this will be out of the way soon. So we
really have to get Mike talking now, because otherwise it's all going to be us. So Mike, what do you have to say for yourself?
A couple comments. We were talking about infrastructure, and we were talking about visionaries. The great thing that we provide as part of this cloud product is all of those infrastructure pieces, the scaling, clustering, all of that, completely transparent to the user. They don't have to think about that at all. So you were talking about, how hard it is to get going. Essentially, we take and do all that hard work behind the scenes completely transparently. And what you're delivered with up front is a super easy tool to use. This is kind of an approach we've taken with FreeSwitch as far as supplying toolkits of things that you can use to build other things, but we've gone leaps and bounds above. We never really bridged the gap of accessibility and usability to anyone with FreeSwitch, and with the cloud products we're doing major work in that direction. The barrier to entries are quickly dropping to zero, both from a technical standpoint and a business standpoint. Like Eric and Tony were talking about, we took away all of this upfront of figuring out a carrier and how to terminate things in different places and working out business deals and working out pricing deals that are actually competitive. We took all of those issues out of the table. We're not even trying to really make money on silly things like DIDs. We're going to provide you with the easiest interface with the lowest possible technical challenges, and just let you be creative and deliver innovative things. So that part is pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited about some of the new stuff that's coming down our roadmap. Just the new APIs and new approaches to APIs. We've taken a look at what some of the competition is doing, what people want to do, the kind of tools, and the way to expose APIs. And I think we have some more interesting, easier to use approaches that will, one up everyone on the lowering barriers to entry and getting people in the door and making interesting applications. So
what can you tell us without giving too much away at this stage about the new stuff?
Not a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Notice how Eric real quick.
Tease us a bit. Come on, Eric.
Well, I mean, I think we've already kind of spoken to this in the public sphere a little bit. So, I mean, one of the elements to our strategy moving forward is to go beyond, markup language for interface for developers. We're going to be providing some pretty interesting interfaces for developers to gain access to media and data resources in a real-time way. So they'll have immediate response time. It's it's not the REST APIs of old that you kind of used to. It's a new paradigm in terms of how developers interact with their applications and their back-end infrastructure. And so I think it's it's taking it to a completely new level, and it's pretty exciting stuff. We call it the Relay set of APIs. And I think it's going to change the way developers look at developing real-time communications. Frankly, it's a pretty serious shift.
Let me ask a question about this that relates to something that's a little bit richer in data. Suppose someone is doing something and it has to do with these channels of phone calls or text, either one, phone calls or texting. Let's say that I'm setting up some kind of a campaign, could be political, could be GoFundMe style stuff. And phone lines are part of this. So people are calling in and they want to talk to somebody. So they're talking to somebody. Well, obviously there's challenges of routing this to people in different time zones or whatever. But also there's maybe some extra data involved in this. So that would mean that you have a permanent record, and yet there's sensitivity to all this at the same time. So that would all have to be revealed. But does any of this make any sense? Is there contextual data that's interesting other than just receiving a phone call and routing it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that ties directly into the Relay kind of mindset on this side. There's a whole level of metadata that we want to leverage in order to do some contextual things that maybe developers aren't doing today by way of some of the APIs that they're working with. So yeah, it's definitely interesting, and it's certainly within our scope moving forward. Something else I wanted to touch on briefly, Randy, before I forget, because I have a tendency to do that, is is the overlap between FreeSwitch and SignalWire, right? Like there's this kind of thought that, they've moved away from FreeSwitch and they're focusing all their energy on SignalWire. And that's not entirely true, right? Like we have this massive install base of FreeSwitch deployments. They are, if you tied all those deployments together, it would easily be the largest communications platform on the planet. And we're not ignorant to the fact that this is one of the reasons why we are here. And some of the things that we're doing to help that install base is we're providing methods to easily connect your FreeSwitch deployments directly into SignalWire's cloud infrastructure. And I think that I just wanted to make sure that that point was getting across, because I don't want this feeling and sentiment out there that hey, they're abandoning the projects that got them to where they are.
No, that's a very, very important point, I think, Eric, that you can run or continue to run your own slice of FreeSwitch, but then you use SignalWire to extend it further to do things that you can't do easily on your own private FreeSwitch installation. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that, as time goes on, it'll become more and more apparent that the things that you can do in FreeSwitch, you can also do in SignalWire, and maybe you can do them in a much more dynamic and flexible way than the way that you're used to doing them in the typical FreeSwitch deployments. And also, to Brian's point and to Mike's point, is the scalability, the resiliency, the robustness of the way that we've architected the cloud is you're going to have a hard time getting your FreeSwitch deployment to that level without a huge amount of heavy lifting. So, but it's going to be a nice gradual kind of transition, and people can make the choice to go down that path or stay down, in the FreeSwitch, standalone deployment, scenario. It'll be up to them, and we're going to continue to kind of support them in their growth as well.
Yeah, I can get very excited about SignalWire because these days we're kind of moving into the next age of voice over IP. I mean, the first age is all about how you connect people together, and we're moving more into it's what you can do with it in the back end, the applications, the intelligence that you can put in the core now. That's where the money is, and so if you want to make money out of these things, that's where you've got to go. The cost of making phone calls now or sending SMS messages is so small, it's almost transparent. So if you want to make money out of anything, then you've got to put some intelligence into it.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Jay, we have Jay Carpenter with us, and Jay had a couple of comments or questions. I'm not sure which, but Jay, please.
Sure. Thanks, Randy. I'm excited about this because, for decades, there's been a chasm between the voice networks and the rich media networks, the internet, basically. And I think this looks like another step to bring those items together. And, in the decentralized realm, we're starting to see more voice incorporated into different constructs. So I think, what SignalWire is doing looks like it's very promising to do the best of both worlds, have FreeSwitch plus this easier interface that developers and innovators can start to experiment with and sort of scale this up. So, personally, I'm seeing initiatives that are starting to bubble up in the blockchain realm. And I even hate to use the word blockchain anymore, but let's call it the decentralized web realm. So I'm just getting introduced to SignalWire, but I'm optimistic that this is a great step to really create some harmony between the internet and the voice networks. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? And that includes IRC if you're listening and you're watching IRC.
Just to reiterate what Eric was saying about we're not leaving FreeSwitch behind. We're kind of betting, all of our voice traffic, all of our video traffic, all goes through FreeSwitch. So if anything, this is driving a whole set of new features and stability and a new wave of major development on FreeSwitch. As we grow and have more people working on new pieces, you'll, over the next year or so, see a whole bunch of things drop into FreeSwitch that maybe, pieces that are designed to implement pieces of the cloud. So lots of new things in FreeSwitch will be driven by the requirements of deploying cloud services. So while we do a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes as far as things like clustering and things like that, FreeSwitch itself is getting kind of a new breath of life and energy by way of all the requirements we have for building out FreeSwitch. And then, like Eric was talking about, on the other side, enabling FreeSwitch to be expanded by cloud features. So if you're looking to do something like a very large conference, which FreeSwitch couldn't do on its own before, the possibilities will open up of things like a conference that starts on your box but expands into the cloud with cloud DIDs and cloud distribution, so you can have very large conferences built out, something FreeSwitch could never do. So all these features are going to come out of the combination of FreeSwitch and the cloud.
Cool. You guys are great guests. We actually have a full house of guests, and you're probably half of them. So fantastic. Wish everybody would take this seriously. That'd be great. Excellent. Who else has some questions or comments? I
have a different angle on this, and that is a purely business one, really. At the moment, the SignalWire implementation, shall we say, offers us US and Canadian phone numbers, so +1 only. Are we going to expand? Are we going to be looking at being able to buy a number if in Australia or Sudan or wherever we want to buy one?
Yeah, so thanks for the segue. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, obviously our European and compadres over the pond aren't being forgotten. I'm actively working now on those relationships. Some of them have already been signed, sealed, and delivered. It's just a matter of covering off on our own backyard before we get too carried away with extending our reach too much. But yes, definitely those are coming, and not too far off in the distance.
Okay, and extending on that, clearly we want to move into the mobile cellular range as well. And I know with Evan's background and recent experience, one would expect to see a certain element of that creeping in. So I look forward to that as well. It's not just globalization; it's also moving into
mobilization.
Mobilization, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's inherent in the DNA of the company. SignalWire's, been primarily, focused on driving communications on whatever platform you use the most, and mobile is obviously high utilization. So that plays a big part into, what are we building and who are we building it for? Speaking to Evan's past, I'll defer to him to make any comments in that regard. But it wouldn't surprise me if you saw more from a mobile perspective from this company going forward.
Jolly well, I hope so.
I'm thinking that maybe you can help us with some introductions there, Jay.
Well, strange enough, I think we may be able to. Yes.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point, actually, because we're at a moment in time when the internet has existed for 25 years. I can't remember which. So there's been a lot of work done. You could maybe put some markers at the moment where Ajax, remember that? What a big deal. Or WebRTC, similar, but in the communications realm, came in. But now we're at a point where like almost everybody's on a phone. Now, for some of us, this is a challenge because I don't like typing on a phone. Well, you can dictate and all that. And the phone has a limited screen space, no matter how big it is. He said as he read a message from his wife from a certain distance. But anyway, it's tough to live on a phone if you were born before, I should say, before 2000.
1903, Randy, or whatever.
In my case, 1878. Anyway, point is, what are the challenges? And I don't know who wants to speak to this, but what are the challenges for developing and taking into consideration mobile? Because mobile is huge. They keep saying mobile is the future. Well, apparently it's the present, even though for me, I'd rather sit at a desktop if I'm actually doing anything serious. But what are the challenges for developing? Michael?
Yeah, let me just say one thing, and then we can, let the technical guys dive into the details. But I think one of the things that we're looking to that will help those interactions a great deal is artificial intelligence. So, I mean, we've already got some pretty good connectors for Dialogflow, which is Google's AI, and we're working on more. So, with that being said, I'll hand off to Anthony or whoever else wants to.
Well, one thing I'd like to know is, in your question, do you mean when you say a phone, are you talking about like Ma Bell's phone versus a mobile phone?
No, I meant one of these mobile devices.
So any phone.
It could be a tablet as well, because it seems like most people, as I said, born after, let's say, the year 2000, certainly, that's what they do. Or maybe even I don't know. I can't remember the names of the generations, but
well, you're right, Randy. These days, a Ma Bell type telephone is reasonably insignificant. People don't use them anymore, so everybody just uses these devices.
Since we're talking like visions, right? That's what this is all about. One of the things that we believe is that everything is going to be a phone pretty soon. We're already starting to see it. You have like refrigerators and microwaves and TV sets and like anything that has audio and microphone on it is a phone now. And we don't really even think about it. Like we're talking to these weird cylinders that we put in our house. And
Tony, let me interrupt you for a second, because that's fascinating, and it ties in with something that Bruce Schneier was talking about in his book, and I heard about in an interview. But just to get back to you right away, interesting point that you just made, because yeah, your refrigerator is on the internet. I have a vacuum. I hate this stuff, but I have a vacuum cleaner that's on our Wi-Fi. But the point is, and you just said it, my vacuum cleaner doesn't have a microphone, nor does the refrigerator. But do you think that someday all of these devices are going to have microphones and maybe cameras by extension? Or, we're talking to them through our phones now, right? Because these are computers. And Schneier's point, by the way, was that this is a great thing. I'm going to put a trademark sign on it because he said it. Everything is a computer now. And that's brilliant. It's true. So, Tony, where does the line draw on?
I guess so. I said everything is a phone. So therefore, I guess anything that's a computer is also a phone. And how much easier could it get nowadays? Because you can literally, because of the fact that everyone wants a phone now. Like the third generation hand-me-down phones are amazing now. Like not even like some of us are like technophiles and run out and buy the newest one that comes out and it does all this cool shit. But like go back to like, there's a lot of people that buy third, fourth generation ones, they're cheap and they're amazing. Like it's Android from 3 generations ago still is amazing right now. It's LTE. And so there's really no barrier to entry to having an amazing phone.
You remember these things?
I miss those phones.
Yeah. Because of having those.
They did do text though.
Just imagine how many people there are who need those phones, which is the mass production of all those components, which means they're super cheap, which means that you could almost just take a phone now and glue it to the wall and say, why bother making a refrigerator that has all kinds of phone implementations? You just literally stick a cell phone on the fridge, like just hide it in the back of it.
That's exactly what Corrado did. He glued a phone to the wall for his right?
No, but I have an interesting tale of anything is a computer now. My dishwasher was not drying the dishes properly. So the technician came out with a laptop, connected the laptop in a little socket in the panel, reprogrammed the dishwasher to dry the things better, probably a sensor calibration or a longer time. It's a dishwasher. It's a computer.
Wait, Corrado, did you know that there was an access in this way, or was it only for them?
It's only for them, but yeah, I realized that everything is a computer. I didn't think that a dishwasher could have a reprogrammable software inside. I thought it was simply a chip that was pre-programmed with the optimal timings and programs and everything. But a dishwasher, it's something as simple and basic as a dishwasher has a computer inside.
And does it dry better now?
Yes, it does.
It's amazing. That's great. But everything is a computer. That's true. I mean, and we all have all these appliances. I mean, they may not be connected to the net or anything. Although I think that's the first story I've heard, Corrado, where somebody comes in and it's a tech can connect to it, but you can't. In other words, they didn't advertise, oh, you can go to the web. Because here's the thing that we have. I can bring this up real quick.
If I can interrupt you, that's just one step too short, though. Imagine if the dishwasher was connected to internet.
Right.
So
Well,
the assistant could have uploaded the new software or the new firmware to the dishwasher remotely.
That's
why wasn't?
Yeah, what's that, Randy?
That's
your vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, the vacuum cleaner. Interesting point, though, and this has nothing to do with our guests. I'm sorry for the detour here, but once we start talking about that, what's terrible is the fact that this stuff needs to be updated. So apparently California, I think, passed a law regarding all that, but everything is a computer, etc. Let's pull back to actually talking about SignalWire.
Everything is a computer and needs to be connected. So we need
the premise of SignalWire, because everything's a computer and they all need a network.
Right, and they all need to be updated. Anyway, that's less of a concern because we're talking cloud now. SignalWire. And Brian, I asked you a question on IRC, but you're obviously on IRC without looking at it. So I'm going to ask a question here. Is the Slack open to anyone who cares? And if so, how do they get there? Talk about
that one. I think you go to signalwire.community in your web browser,
and
that should get you in.
Okay. So because that's interesting. And actually, these guys dragged me back into Slack, which I'm not a huge fan of, just to be able to talk.
Well, you're not, but we all use it.
Well, go for it then.
You like your Aspidistra or whatever it's called.
Okay. What have we not said? We're 13 minutes out from the end.
Well, how about things that we'd like to see in SignalWire, apart from mobile networks, of course? I want to see a whole load of kind of like a library of easy to follow examples.
We're actually working on that. That is, I was given a directive yesterday with some list of things to kind of whip up some examples to kind of demonstrate the technology.
Yeah, and you said my favorite word there, demonstrate. We want to see lots of demonstrations. People doing some amazing things with this technology just to get people's juices flowing and the excitement going.
Yep.
An idea I have, instead of, I don't know, block programming for things that the sequences you want to happen, if you can do natural language programming. So people describing the process and you examining that, and with artificial intelligence taking that description into a process.
I think some of those concepts are coming. We've been noodling on that internally. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw something similar to those concepts being contained in a larger directive here, maybe next year.
That's good. That's good, because natural language opens access to, as I said, visionaries that don't have specifically the technical knowledge, but can express verbally what they would like to see, to create. If you put some AI into interpreting the words of that.
There's some concepts around that, and then there's some concepts around just the development environment itself, and making that a bit more consumable. So those concepts we're kind of working on our latter 2019 roadmap, and those concepts are in there for sure. Great feedback. Thank you.
Can we agree on saying machine learning, by the way, because there's no fucking intelligence in that stuff. I'm sorry. Okay?
Touche.
Not yet.
No, really.
Not yet. Yeah, but it is coming.
Yeah.
The intelligence bit is coming.
The world, but when?
Well, hopefully you'll see it before you get too old.
I'll probably die before it, and I'll be happy for that. Anyway, what are we missing here? We've got about 10 minutes. Not that we would have to stop. We can go on for 8 hours, but
yeah. Well, one thing we haven't had here Eric or Brian is any kind of demonstration of the goodies that you've got in there. And you know,
Would you?
I love nothing better than an impromptu demonstration. So give us a quick
They're
peek.
not ready for that.
I don't really have anything handy that we could show off.
Oh, yeah, just such a disappointment.
No one invited us yesterday.
I have to repeat that what you're showing off, Brian. You have the most spectacular video ever on this conference. I have to get one of those cameras. Of course, you know who wants to see me.
It's the lighting too. That's the secret.
Really,
it's the lighting and those. And Brian, have you had your teeth done as well? They're just so good.
And what's with the hair? You got the really.
You're getting all Californian on us, aren't you?
I like that when we go into our conference, since it's under our control, I can actually just put stuff on his green screen. It's fun. I put him on a roller coaster sometimes.
Right.
And the good bit is that you can remote control his background, can't you?
Yeah. I can actually. I added a feature where we take somebody else's video and put it into his green screen, so then you can look like you're sitting next to each other in the same screen. In next speed from another caller.
We should actually do.
There might be a video of me pacing around behind Brian repeatedly.
That's excellent. That's excellent. What have we not said, though? I get back to that. I get it. We go to SignalWire.com. You sign up. There is a credit there if you want to mess around with it, and that's great.
Yeah, I've got the credit. I seem to have done rather well because I seem to have ended up with slightly more than $100 worth of credits. Does this mean that you like me? Somebody likes me in SignalWire, so that's good.
I think one thing we haven't talked about at all is that our commitment to open source is really what brought us here, and we have a way to employ all these amazing open source developers who have been, for 10 years putting their heart into all these different things, and now we have like a common home.
Yes.
So
yeah, and that is so important to have something like SignalWire tying a lot of these bits and pieces together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what I would notice, you see a lot of companies that they leverage open source, and they just think open source is just shopping center for stuff they can make things out of, and don't really think of what it's for, like that there's people behind it. So we use other open source stuff in our company, and as many of them as we can, we try to involve them in the company in some way. So
right. So that's one of the great things about FreeSwitch is that the FreeSwitch community always has been so strong, and if you have a strong community, it means that you end up with more people working on the problems. And you get there faster, I guess. And
it seems to me that the combination of FreeSwitch with SignalWire with the open source centric approach is a big advantage over some of the other offerings that are out there. So that's very attractive from my standpoint. And maybe we've covered this already, but what are some of the other advantages of SignalWire over some of the other offerings that might be somewhat comparable?
You mean apart from price?
Right.
I think one of the biggest advantages we all talked over each other. We're all excited to answer this one. We can take turns.
Yeah, no, Tony, I think you're in a good position to kind of speak to this. And I think that the only thing that I would say is the real-time development tools that we're building it's a paradigm shift. And I think that, we should probably spend a little bit of time talking about that.
Yeah. I'd start by, if you want to be simple answer, our engineering department is amazing. And you already know that because you've seen what we built so far. Now, all these other companies that are out there might have figured out how to leverage our technology by shopping for it and trying to, stick it somewhere, but we made it. No one would even be there if we didn't make it. And now just imagine what else we're going to make. Because if we made FreeSwitch completely free with no funding and no help from anyone, what are we going to do if we're an actual corporation? So that's like, that in itself should just be self-explanatory. But if you take the approach that we also have, which is not just to throw products out the door and make you get stuck with how they work, but actually invite you to come and ask about how it works. Like in real time, we've always prided ourselves on someone asks for some feature and we make it instantly. So you don't have that either. You can't just come into a free Slack channel and talk about what functionality you'd like to see, and all of a sudden it shows up the next day.
But you know what? I've seen that happen with you, Tony, where I've wanted something and I've sort of talked to you, and then 30 minutes later, you go, "There you go, James." Yeah, talking. You mentioned engineering capability. The free.
I don't know if it's the case for everybody, but James, you stuttered horribly there.
We don't want to lose him right when he's praising you.
Hey, listen.
The FBI out in front of his house or something?
You're right. No, he's
coming out. So
he's just packet lossing. I just want to say that we're really proud and pleased, and I think I speak for everybody on the VUC when I say that it's really a pleasure to have you folks in our community, which is not that huge, but we recognize the huge contribution that you've made, and I'm really proud that you're always, I want to say on call, but you're always ready to come and join us and talk about what you're doing, and I think that's fantastic. James, are you back among the living? I see his avatar there. Back to, we mentioned the Slack channel. Again, everything, we're talking SignalWire, so SignalWire.com will probably bring you all the kinds of information that you need to check into this. If you have no idea what this is about, find somebody in your company who understands it and goes to open an account immediately and try to start playing with it.
Yeah, I've also been writing some blogs lately to try and explain some of what we're doing. And so I have that on my LinkedIn page or on our Free Switch. If you join us on Facebook, you can find it posted on our page.
Yeah, I mean, for people who have even the slightest idea, like myself, about this thing, it isn't rocket science. It really isn't. These are just hugely important tools that were put together. And I can't say enough good about the work from the Free Switch team and whoever is on the SignalWire team who wasn't on the Free Switch team. Same thing goes. James, you're back with us among the living.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, it's a shame. I was just getting to my big build-up to actually say something very, very nice about Tony and the Free Switch team. And there's clearly somebody there in a different domain, just taking me out so I can't say nice things. But I was just going to say how amazing the community is, and that is demonstrated by the kind of stuff that comes out in the dangerous demos at ClueCon. It's just unbelievable, some of the things that get shown off. And every time we do a dangerous demos at ClueCon, I am just totally bowled over with the sheer brilliance of some of the stuff that comes out. And quite often it's put together at absolutely no notice. And a good example of that was that amazing demo that Mark and the guys from Fusion PBX put together.
Can we
with all of about 2 minutes notice?
Not the past, and ask everybody with the 2 minutes left, what is next? What are the up and coming places where we can see you? Because ClueCon is almost a year away. What's coming up on the schedule? Anything? Commedia World, May 6th to 8th.
I think the general philosophy here, Randy, to answer that question from a product perspective, is we are heads down building the best communications platform extensible to developers and the enterprise known to man, and we don't have a great deal of cycles to be trotting all over the planet doing shows right now, but suffice it to say, we're there for the developers. So if you come and join our community, we're there to help you. I think one of the other things we wanted to highlight is how easy it is for the average guy to come into this platform and create tools they can use immediately.
Yeah, that's a huge point, Eric, because always Free Switch has been kind of like the big boys, sophisticated Asterisk. Everybody starts off on Asterisk, but the really good people kind of gravitate onto Free Switch, and that is because it's so powerful. It is quite complicated.
Yeah, correct. And trying to create the interface so that it can be assimilated easily is not not trivial. It's hard to make things easy, right? It's It's easy to make things complicated when it's a complex piece of software underneath it, but it's hard to make it easy. So we've put a lot of effort into that. And I was making reference to to AI and dialogue flow. And I know this is a swear word in Randy's vocab, but suck it up, Randy. So the easiest way, you can make use of this technology from, like, let's say a salesperson's perspective. They can come in, they can sign up, they can create a project, and they can assign it to an actual dialogue agent that they have running already. And they can use our infrastructure to power that agent interface. So, and that's there today. And that's very easily kind of assimilated from, the guys that aren't engineers. So it's pretty exciting stuff to be able to provide that. And then also, like, on the other end of the spectrum, like very complex, advanced offerings for the larger enterprise as well. So, and yeah, so it's pretty cool.
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you. No, I'll tell you what I want, Eric. I want a SignalWire bot or servant to sit between me and the outside world, because I get so many comments from so many people saying, "Oh, James, I've got 20 numbers for you, but I can never get through to you."
True.
But what you don't consider is that I may not want to talk to you. So you've got to take that into account. So what I want is a bot that is always there, always polite, always nice, which can then filter traffic that's coming into me from multiple comms channels, and the really important stuff will always get through to me. That's what I want. And if we can build that with SignalWire, that will be absolutely invaluable.
I'm sure the Google AI will do that for you, James.
Yeah, no, and you combine that with the SignalWire back end, and it gets pretty sexy pretty fast. So we can make it happen, James.
Yeah, well, let's do it. And oh yeah, and everything must work in mobile land as well, because that's where I live these days.
Okay. With that, signalwire.com. It's an easy place to go and find out how to contact these guys. Thanks so much, really, from the bottom of my heart. We think the world of you folks, and I'm really glad that you showed up in numbers. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey,
thanks for having me.
Quick question. Is anybody from SignalWire or FreeSwitch going to be at TAD Summit in Lisbon next week?
I don't think so. We've all got like a bunch of stuff at once. Traveling.
They're working, James. They're working. He said already.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be in Lisbon, and I'm going to be working. And that TAD Summit community.
To add, because you guys were just talking about Asterisk, and I thought I'd bring that up for a minute, since that's kind of where we started. Mm-hmm. We put a lot of work into Asterisk. Our names are still there in the code. We started going to AstroCon, and super cool. SignalWire does not discriminate against Asterisk. You can connect your Asterisk to SignalWire just as well as anything else in any other VoIP application. So there's definitely no weird FreeSwitch only kind of thing going on here.
That's a good point.
And I have to say, we use both Asterisk and FreeSwitch together, but they just do different things.
From a product perspective, you're going to see some interesting stuff coming out of our camp with regards to a polite nod to the Asterisk community as well.
Very cool. All right. There's only one thing left to do.